This week, a powerful op-ed appeared in the Times of Israel. The headline read, "An open letter to Israel's friends in North America." The letter began, "We are taking the unusual step of directly addressing you at a moment of acute crisis in Israel." The letter was written by Mati Friedman, Yossi Klein Halevi, and Rabbi Daniel Gordis, three North Americans who made Aliyah many decades ago and have lived and worked in Israel ever since. Three figures who are known both in Israel and in the diaspora as centrists, staunch Zionists who have spoken eloquently on behalf of the state of Israel when it's under attack. But in this letter, they warned of a danger to Israel that is coming from the actions of its own government. This is what they wrote. "We have explained and defended Israel against the campaign of distortions that seeks to turn the Jewish state into a pariah, and will proudly continue to do so. Today, though, protecting Israel also means defending it from a political leadership that is undermining our society's cohesion and its democratic ethos, the foundations of the Israeli success story. The changes afoot will have dire consequences for the solidarity of Israel's society and for its economic miracle, as our leading economists are warning. It will also threaten Israeli-American relations, and it will do grave damage to our relations with you, our sisters and brothers in the diaspora. This crisis is unique and uniquely heartbreaking because it comes from within. None of us is an alarmist, but this is a moment for alarm, and one in which the voices of Israel's friends must be heard. Israel's government is moving to eviscerate the independence of our judiciary and remake the country's democratic identity. When three figures of this stature speak to North American Jewry, their words deserve our attention. What are the dangerous changes that Friedman, Halevi, and Gordis are talking about? If you've been following the news, you know that newly elected Prime Minister Netanyahu has proposed an overhaul of Israel's judicial system. If implemented, the Prime Minister's plan would significantly limit the High Court's ability to review government decisions and laws passed by the Knesset and strike them down. The plan would allow the governing coalition to override High Court rulings by a simple majority of 61 votes in the 120-member Knesset. Thus, a simple majority of the Knesset would be able to pass a law even if, in the opinion of the High Court, that law violates Israel's basic laws. These basic laws, which resemble our Bill of Rights here in the United States, are a series of fundamental principles that protect civil rights and individual liberties, uphold human dignity, equality, and fairness. In effect, the Prime Minister's plan eviscerates the right of judicial review. The plan would also give the government complete control over the selection of judges. Another proposed change would make it much harder for Israeli citizens to file High Court petitions against government decisions. This is of special concern since Netanyahu's governing coalition includes avowed extremists, far right-wing nationalists, Jewish fundamentalists opposed to the rights of women, LGBTQ people, and non-Orthodox Jews. This plan would be extremely alarming in any country that calls itself a democracy, but it's particularly dangerous to Israel. Israel has no written constitution, no second branch of the legislature, no federal system or regional elections. Thus, it lacks many of the elements that in other democracies provide a series of checks and balances on unbridled executive and legislative power. In Israel, the High Court serves that purpose, acting to protect individual rights and constrain the power of the government. Without an independent judiciary, there are no checks and balances. The Prime Minister's plan, write Friedman, Gordis, and Halevi, effectively concentrates nearly all power in the hands of one person, the Prime Minister himself. This is no judicial reform, but a dramatic alteration that would bring Israel's governing system not closer to the US or Canada, but to Hungary and Turkey. First and foremost, the Prime Minister's plan is self-serving. He's currently on trial for corruption and has appointed government ministers who have criminal records. No wonder he wants to overturn the legal system that threatens him. And the Prime Minister's plan, the letter warns, is being pursued at breakneck speed without any national discussion, without having presented it to the electorate in any meaningful way before the recent elections, and without regard for criticism now coming from across the political spectrum and social spectrum. The letter is correct. The Prime Minister's plan has drawn intense criticism, even from longtime proponents of judicial reform. More importantly, it has drawn vociferous protests from ordinary Israelis. Tens of thousands of Israelis have taken to the streets. For more than 4 weeks now, ever since the plan was announced, they've been rallying to express their opposition to these anti-democratic measures. They carry signs that read "No to Dictatorship." Esther Chayut, president of Israel's High Court, has also spoken out. She said, "The government's plan is a relentless attack against the judicial system, as if it was an enemy that should be defeated. It's meant to deal a fatal blow to the independence of the judicial branch and turn it into a silent branch." She and others warn that if the Prime Minister carries out this plan, the court will no longer be able to protect human rights or the rule of law. An eviscerated High Court without the ability to override laws proposed in the Knesset will be powerless against a coalition that seeks to expand the occupation by annexing the West Bank, infringe on the rights of LGBTQ citizens, limit aliyah under the right of return, and delegitimize non-Orthodox Jews. 2,500 years ago, the prophet Isaiah declared, "L'ma'an Sion lo eshche," for Zion's sake I will not be silent, for Jerusalem's sake I will not be still. Now is not the time for us to be silent. If we love Israel, if we care about the future of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state, we must be concerned about the Prime Minister's plan. We do not vote in Israel, and ultimately Israel is a state for its citizens who live there. But all Jews have a stake in Israel as our homeland and as our spiritual center, and as the home of millions of our Jewish brothers and sisters. All of us who care about democracy must be concerned about the threats to human rights faced by Israeli citizens, whether Jewish, Christian, or Muslim. We cannot stand by as this government tells us that because we're not Orthodox, we cannot call Israel our homeland, or that Israel will no longer be a home to democracy or a defender of human rights. At this time of crisis, Friedman, Halevi, and Gordis have called on North American Jews to speak out and make our voices heard. What can we do? We can speak up to our local Jewish Federation and to other Jewish organizations with which we are involved. We can demand that they express our views and let Israeli leaders know where we stand. Speaking out in protest grounded in conscience, is central to Jewish tradition. It goes back to Abraham arguing with God on behalf of the people of Sodom. And in doing so, we join with tens of thousands of Israelis who need our help and support. We must not be cowed by threats from the right. We must not succumb to despair. As Ehud Manor wrote in his Zionist protest anthem, "I will not stay silent because my country changed her face. I will not give up reminding her and sing in her ears until she will open her eyes." This is a Shabbat that stands for the importance of singing out and speaking out. We call it Shabbat Shirah, the Sabbath of song, because of the powerful words our ancestors sang when they crossed the sea and experienced the miracle of liberation. At that moment, Moshe led the people as they lifted up their voice in joyful song. Then says the Torah, "Vatikach Miriam haniviyah, achot Aharon et hataf beyada." Miriam, the prophet Aaron's sister, picked up a hand drum, and all the women went out after her, dancing with hand drums. Why is Miriam called a Niviyah, a prophet? The Torah tells us little about her, but according to Chizkuni, a 13th century sage, Miriam was a prophet because she led through the power of her words. She gave vent to her convictions through words and used them to teach correct moral behavior. Moses and Miriam remind us of the power of our own voices, and our words are needed now. Our words can make a difference. Tomorrow night, we celebrate the eve of Tu B'Shvat, the festival when the sap is said to rise in Israel's trees, when their life force is renewed and they prepare to burst into blossom, a beautiful sight. May our own strength be renewed. May we lift up our voices in powerful protest and speak out for the beautiful blossoming of Israel's democracy.